Hi guys, again this is Lordy, ang tito mong psychologist. So for today's video, let's talk about some of the most used models in understanding psychopathology. Actually, there are two dominating models when we talk about how we currently understand psychopathology. The first one is what we call the Diathesis stress model. It gives us an idea that people somehow inherits the tendency or vulnerability, also known as diathesis, that may be activated when we are exposed to a set of different stressors or other adverse events within the environment. So let's try to dig into our genes. We know that we tend to inherit the long molecules of DNA from our parents. So usually we would be obtaining 23 pairs or 46 chromosomes. 22 pairs are basically in charge of the different parts of our body, while the 23rd pair is in charge for determining our sex. All right? So basically, these genes or DNA dictates the level of vulnerability or tendency for us to develop a specific medical condition or a psychological problem. Nevertheless, it is not treated as the sole determinant whether we would be developing such conditions in the future, but instead, scientists consider it just as a precursor, or whether we are vulnerable or not, because now we apply the practice of epigenetics, which is actually the study of on changes in organisms caused by modifications of gene expression, which we usually experience when we interact with our environment. It gives us an idea that it's the environment that could actually decide whether it will turn on or switch on a specific gene, or on the other hand, have it switched off. Okay? Now, let's go back to the diathesis stress model. Actually, it is simply compared to a glass of water. No? Um, let's say that we are about to put an oil at the bottom part of that glass. Let me borrow a tumbler here. So, ayan. Like for example, ito. Okay, so the diathesis stress models, you can see there's a set of liquid that's present at the bottom part of this cup. That would serve as the genetic expression, the diathesis, the tendency brought to us by the genes that we inherited from our parents, from our great-grandparents, or basically from our family medical history. Okay? So, nevertheless, this is not enough to lead someone to experience a specific medical condition or, in our context, a mental health problem. All right? But when we interact with the environment, okay, let's say that this cover, okay, ito na lang gagamitin natin, would represent the amount of stress that we would be encountering within our immediate environment. All right? So, upon experiencing such stressors, some people who may develop adequate coping capabilities, strategies, can actually learn how to devise a set of steps, techniques, and strategies that they can use to help themselves lessen these stressors, right? However, for some individuals, aside from their genetic predispositions, okay, they won't be able to establish adequate strategies, capabilities to address such problems. So these stressor would actually reach a breaking point, a threshold that could then lead them to experience a diagnosable mental health condition. All right? Those strategies, techniques that we do in order to help ourselves cope are known as the protective factors. Kung meron yon, yes, there would be a large propensity for us to decrease or to help ourselves decrease these stress brought to us by our environment. But if those protective factors are insufficient, then eventually we would really reach a certain threshold that could make this cup spill, and then metaphorically give us an idea how a person could suffer from a diagnosable mental health condition. Alright? Thank you kung sino man ang may-ari nito. The next model it's actually an expanded version of the diathesis stress model, known as the gene-environment correlation model or reciprocal gene-environment model. So basically, as I've mentioned, it's an extension of the diathesis stress model, just like as to how we use our cup, okay, to metaphorically explain such relationships. The diathesis or the gene expression, the environmental stressors, and the different traits that we have, all right, within us, our personality traits, are not actually treated as the liquid, no, that's inside that specific glass of water. But instead, it is considered as a set of ingredients, such as an ice cube, all right, that could either help the amount of water increase, okay, or on the other hand, um, absorb, no, those water, like for example, for sponge cubes, no, absorb them so that they can actually lessen the volume of water. Okay? So if these traits, stressors, and genetic expression tend to be less capable of arriving at a certain or less, all right, cut. Okay, so if ever these traits, environmental stressors, or gene expression does not actually lead us towards expressing or developing a diagnosable mental health condition, the amount of the amount of water or the volume of water is expected to decrease. All right, but if these things in relation to each other contributed altogether to increase that water source, then again, it would reach a breaking point or a threshold where someone can actually experience a diagnosable mental health condition. So those two models are often used to better understand how people tend to develop psychopathology. Remember, it is always a constant interaction between our biology and our environment. But there's another third force or factor that affects how these two things interact, and that's our traits, our cognitive capabilities, our emotional regulation skills that can help us prevent ourselves from dwindling down of having a diagnosable mental health condition. All of them are interacting all together to determine whether someone could really develop a diagnosable mental health condition. All right. So I hope you were able to learn something from this video. Stay tuned for the upcoming videos regarding our lecture about psychopathology and abnormal psychology. Thank you so much for listening, guys.